Samantha Bartleson looks like her mother. She angles her jaw and tells me about the slippery math of genetics. When she comes out as transgender at 48, it's an act of unearthing. Every ounce of femininity she has kept buried for the last 40 years finally sees the sun. When Riley Jackson is 11, her mother dies. After that, Riley lives only with what she can carry. She grows up in a dozen different foster homes, knowing that any bit of joy or comfort she might capture would only ever be transient. When she comes out as transgender at 17, she is still lonely. Rue Leone is 5 when their foster mother pulls their hair into a fist and cuts it off in one snip. Boys don't have long hair, she says. Rue lies awake at night crying. They ask God over and over why he made them wrong. Bobby Eulinger leaves her congregation after 33 years. These people have become her family, and she feels their absence like a dull ache. Before she goes, Bobby offers to answer questions or teach a course to help the congregation better understand her gender-fluid identity. The pastor politely declines. When Tori Hay is outed to their father as gay, he calls them an abomination. Coming out to him and the rest of their family as a non-binary person doesn't even feel like an option.
The thing about gender is that it's a verb. It's something we do, not something we are. We teach and learn gender entirely through our interactions with one another. It's a social system, not a biological fact. When we're born, the doctor assigns each of us one of 2 distinct genders, boy or girl. And we're expected to live out the roles associated with those genders every single day for the rest of our lives. We call that system the gender binary. And if you're cisgender, that means the doctor said you were a boy or a girl and you just always felt like one. You probably never even thought about it much. But it doesn't work that way for everybody. And it shouldn't have to. Some transgender people identify as female to male transgender people or male to female transgender people, but the term trans encompasses identities that exist outside of that boy, girl, man, woman binary. Trans identities are varied and diverse. They can be non-binary, gender fluid, gender queer, agender, gender non-conforming. But in our culture, where there's a strict set of binary-based rules, people who can't or won't conform to those standards face a lifetime of violence. 28% of Black transgender people are unemployed as a direct result of their gender identities. That is 4 times the national average unemployment rate.
41% of trans and gender nonconforming people attempt suicide in their lifetimes. That is more than 10 times the rate at which people in the general population attempt suicide. And those numbers are even higher for trans people of color. Rowan Collins said that they never imagined they'd live to be 20. Samantha Bartleson knew she had to come out as a transgender woman when the thought of seeing her children grow up was no longer sufficient reason to stay alive. In a moment of blind desperation, Natalie Martin almost drove her car off a bridge before she ever had the chance to meet her son. Trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people grow up in a world that tells them they don't exist. Or if they do, perhaps they shouldn't.
The American poet Adrienne Rich said that when those who have the power to name and socially construct our reality choose not to see you, when someone with authority describes the world and you are simply not in it, you experience a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked into a mirror and saw nothing. But Rich also said that it takes strength of soul to resist that void. It takes love and courage and power, and not just on an individual level, but in the form of collective action. Transness is shameful and isolating, in part because it is a failure to adhere to the most basic standards by which our society operates. But on the other side of that so-called failure, there is absolute freedom. And there is a well of unrelenting joy. Natalie Martin said that after she came out, she could finally start building a future for herself because she finally felt like she had one. When a trans or gender nonconforming person is able to live authentically, their experience changes the fundamental framework of our world. It binds us together and gives us all permission to know and love the parts of ourselves that it might just be easier to hide or deny. Every single person you see here risked and endured the most horrible kinds of rejection because they dared to embrace the truest versions of themselves. They loved themselves enough to live. And that kind of self-love is radical, and it's healing. It broadens our collective experience. So when you leave here, please read these stories. If you're a cisgender person, pay close attention and open yourself up to considering an experience outside of your own. If you are a transgender person, a queer or gender nonconforming person, this is our love letter to you. You do have a place in this world, and there are others.
Natalie Martin composes arrangements for her students at the Littman School. Samantha Bartleson jumps with the crowd at a punk show. Giovanni Santiago gets married. Bobby Eulinger finds her people again, and Rowan Collins gets stronger every day. Riley Jackson's foster parents adopt her. Tori Hay comes out to their family, and Rue Leone is finally laughing.